We are talking about the historic day that today is, and that's the day where Kamala Harris, who threw her hat in the ring to become the 47th president of the United States, has just broken so many records, fundraising records, records of people breaking Zoom. Black women broke Zoom yesterday when over 40,000 people tried to join a call. And tonight, Black men have busted StreamYard as thousands and thousands have joined in a call being led by Roland Martin to unite Black men around Kamala Harris. Joining me for the rest of the show is Kadida Kenner and Daniel Rosebud. They are both organizers working in these key battleground states, talking to voters, organizing voters, and making sure that we win this election in November. I want to start with you, Daniel. The energy, the excitement that I'm seeing online, the $250 million that's been raised, the endorsement by the AFL-CIO, the 100 Democratic governors, all of these signs sort of suggest this may be a landslide victory for Kamala Harris. Are we overestimating what you're seeing on the ground?
No, I'm really excited. I think that it's a joyous time. I really do think that this also just shows us that the Democrats think it was a good choice for Biden to step aside at this moment, and that they thought it was a good choice for Kamala to step up. We're seeing really, she has the Divine Nine community. She has the HBCU community. She has, I think Kamala represents so many different points of diversity. Not only the fact that she comes from so many different backgrounds, but she's also a woman. And I think that we're really rooting for women right now. I think these are the years of the woman. So
that's good to hear. You are in Georgia, key battleground state. And Kadida, you are in Pennsylvania. Not only is it a battleground state, but it's a state with a governor whose name has been talked about in the top 4 or 5 folks who might become a vice president on this ticket with Kamala Harris. What are you hearing on the ground in Pennsylvania, key state for us?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me back too, Areva. It's been a couple of months and happy to be back here. What a difference a day makes.
Yes.
What we are hearing on the ground here in Pennsylvania, our staff, statewide organization, is on the ground everywhere from Erie to Pittsburgh to Philadelphia to the Poconos region. And what we're hearing on the ground today from our organizers who are out there trying to engage voters, register folks to vote, it is a new day today. They are having much more delightful conversations on the ground, I'll call them. A lot less voter apathy that we are hearing exists. Anecdotally, we've had 2 men be registered to vote today over the age of 35 who said, I'm only registering to vote today because Kamala Harris is on the ticket. So this is what we're experiencing right now in Pennsylvania.
Wow, that's incredible to hear. And obviously it is way too soon to be talking landslide or to even be thinking about or to be talking about a win without also talking about a strategy to get to that win. I said earlier in the show today, I think it was brilliant that Joe Biden, when he did make the decision, that they held on to that decision until after the RNC convention and after the RNC had cemented its strategy, because its strategy was Donald Trump was the young guy running against the old guy. Well, that's over now because Donald Trump is the old guy, and he's the oldest guy because not only is Kamala Harris much younger than he is, many of the folks that she's looking at for potential vice president picks are also in her same age category or even younger than she is. So just instantly, the race has flipped. The narrative around the race has flipped as well, which I think is going to energize, like you said, those 35-year-old voters and so many others. When we come forward, though, I want to talk about white women. I want to talk about suburban voters, because we know we, as energized as Black voters are, and if 100% of every Black voter in this country went out and voted, we still would not win this election. We need coalitions. We need lots of other people in this race with us. So I want to talk about what you're hearing and seeing from those voters when we come forward. We already have established that there is incredible enthusiasm amongst Black people for Kamala Harris. We also are getting some breaking news that she is about 350 delegates shy of cinching the nomination. That would be well in advance of the convention that starts on August 19th. I'm a delegate. We've already been told there's going to be a roll call virtual vote on or before August 7th. So by then, she will be the nominee. Also, some breaking news that AFL, CIO, AFSCME, IBEW, SEIU, United Farm Workers, all of these are initials for large labor unions. So labor unions coming out big today in support of Kamala Harris. Unions stand with Democrats. That's traditionally been the way, but we have seen some union leaders, particularly I think the AFL-CIO union leader was at the RNC convention. He spoke. He did not endorse Donald Trump, but he did speak at that convention. But it looks like that union, as well as 8 or 9 others, have come out in strong support. But let's talk about white women, educated suburban women, and let's talk about Latino voters, because we know it's a coalition of voters that are going to be needed, that we're going to have to turn out in all the states across the union, but definitely in these key battleground states. So we know, Kadida, that white women in the past, sometimes they ride with us and sometimes they are not so reliable, and they're hard to predict. But we know the abortion issue, the reproductive health issue is one that is driving white women, even in red states. So what are you hearing from your suburban white women voters?
I'm glad you bring this up. And I like to mention here that it's not just Democratic women that have abortions. Republican women have abortions, and so do their daughters. And so it is about time that Republican women, independent voters, unaffiliated voters, they need to come forward and they need to vote their values in this election. And they can no longer rely on Black women and other Democratic women to support them in this effort. As with the Dobbs decision, we have to protect our abortion rights and access to abortion, not only here in Pennsylvania, but across the country. So I'll say this, in the last 24 hours, I got an invite from a group called PA Women of Color for Kamala Harris Coalition. It's a Facebook group. And if you go through the comments section of this Facebook group today, you will find out that there are just as many white women in that coalition group named for PA Women of Color as women of color, and showing solidarity with women of color. And that is going to be necessary in this moment, because as you point, if we only have just Black folks coming out to cast ballots, it is not enough for Kamala Harris to win this election. And as someone who was shocked in 2008 to see America elect the first Black president, first Black male president, I will not be shocked in 2024, because we've seen it happen before.
We know it can be done, Daniel. We know that, when Kamala Harris first ran, there was a lot of, quite frankly, she wasn't as appealing to a lot of Black voters. She, in fact, got the reputation of being a cop and of prosecuting Black men. And she didn't have a huge, she had Black support, and I was very much a part of her campaign. So I don't want to say Black people didn't support her, but it doesn't appear to be in the same numbers that we are seeing in this second run for the presidency. And we also know that white women, they didn't vote in the numbers that we had expected in the 2016 election for Hillary Clinton. What are you hearing in Georgia? Again, not just the enthusiasm from Black voters, which we all know is very high, but what about those white women voters in Georgia? Now, you guys elected in one year Warnock and another Democratic senator. That was remarkable and shocking in many ways, given that Georgia is considered in some instances to be a red state. But what's happening now?
Well, I will say that in different elections, different parts of Georgia come out to vote. And so what we saw in elections like for Senator Warnock and Ossoff, we had everyone come out. But then when we saw elections for people like Stacey Abrams, only rural spaces came out, and that didn't amount to much, because most of our rural spaces have residencies of 1,000 to 10,000 residents, whereas our metropolitan and our greater Atlanta has 6 million residents, typically here within those bounds of those 5 counties. But then when we look at really how in 2020 I supported I worked with New Georgia Project and a number of people here like Black Male Voters and a number of other organizations to really flip Georgia purple in a sense. And in that election, it was Gwinnett County and Clayton County within, you know, our metropolitan area that really brought out that really won the vote, right? That really supported the 2020 election. I'm not really directly speaking with white women voters, but I would think that, and I'm normally working on issue-based campaigns as well. So I'm not a partisan person. I'm not for necessarily Democrats or Republicans. Each organization that I support, like the Center for Law and Social Policy or the New Deal for Youth Initiative, are all issue-based initiatives. And what we see is that, you know, I really believe that white women are looking to protect their homes and their spouses, and a lot of times those white males work within the regime of the Republican Party, or they hold positions that are favored under those types of ideals. And so their issues are losing home and legacy, and I do think that they would vote the opposite way in a situation like this. I don't think that their vote will hold up. I think that it is illusion to think that a bunch of white women really control an election when everyone is all in and everyone is really looking to set multiple presidents. I think Vice President currently represents so many different presidents or different special things, her being the first Black woman, her being in that position, her being a woman in general in those spaces, and the time we're in, again, I think is just really calling for her presence. So not really hearing much from them. I think that this is a more so now issue-based running, and people, Kamala represents rational thinking and an opportunity maybe to push positive policy forward in the coming years.
So, Kadida, Daniel said something very important, and we know there were a lot of autopsy type reports done after the 2016 election, and they're, you know, throughout election years. And one of the things we often do here is this analysis that white women vote against their own interests, as we know lots of people, poor people in Kentucky that have supported, you know, senators, you know, and others and other leaders in that state, West Virginia, lots of places where poor people, a large concentration of white poor people in particular, where they support candidates that aren't doing anything to improve their lives. So we do know that people often will vote against their own interests, including, as you said, Republican women. Of course, Republican women have abortions, but people don't always vote their interest. And what we've heard oftentimes about white women is that they vote the interest of their husbands. As Daniel said, their husbands benefit from Wall Street. They benefit from, you know, the corporate tax cuts that Donald Trump has promised them. They buy into this notion that immigrants are, you know, flooding our borders, taking over our country, taking resources away from them. They buy into this, you know, talk from Donald Trump that crime is overtaking our cities and that the cities aren't safe. They can't walk outside. Their kids can't go outside. So they buy into all these dark messages. Their husbands buy into these dark messages, and white women often vote with their husbands and then say, well, you know, I'll do my charity. I'll volunteer for a foster care organization. I'll do something to uplift those that are less fortunate, but I want to maintain my house, my expensive car, my lifestyle, my vacations, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Do you think, you know, what's going to make those white women whose votes are tethered to their husbands, what's going to make them vote differently in this election? Because I agree, Daniel, we shouldn't spend all of our efforts focused on them, but we do need a certain percentage of white women voters in order to win this election. When we come forward, I want to get your take on that, both of you, to respond. What we need to do as Democrats to message to those voters. But how do we convince those non-Black voters, Latino and white voters who we need? Coalition building is key to winning any election. We cannot do this alone. Thanks to all the Black folks who are out there doing their part, volunteering, 30,000 new volunteers. 60% of the donors of all of this money that's been raised are new donors. People have never given to this party before. So there's a lot of excitement, but we need to know, where are our allies as we experience this level of excitement?
I'll say this, there absolutely in the last 24 hours, we've seen the level of excitement on the ground, digitally, on social media, etc. We're an organization, New Pennsylvania Project. We're registering folks to vote in all areas of Pennsylvania, rural, suburban, urban, ex-urban Pennsylvania. And we are engaging not just Black and brown folks, of which we do center, but younger voters as well. And Daniel Rosebud made a great point, that it is white women who have historically voted values that protect white supremacy and protect the supremacy of their husbands, uncles, sons, brothers. And I'll say something is a little different here in 2024 in the climate. And that is that we did not have Dobbs' decision in 2020 when white women came out voting more for Republicans than they did for Democrats. They recognize now that they must vote for themselves and their daughters in this moment. And it's always a good reminder to let them know that no one knows how you vote. When you get behind that screen and you cast your ballot, nobody knows how you voted but you. That's absolutely something we had to utilize in 2008 when we were trying to persuade white women to vote for Barack Obama during that time. So I'll say in this moment, it's a little different. We are experiencing a climate in which women of all races, all creeds are standing up for themselves and what is best for them. And I hope that that carries over here through 2024. But I will say that it absolutely has been one of our challenges is to make sure that our coalition is broad. We know that the Democratic Party is a broad tent. It's a big tent, and it allows for lots of folks to come in. And at this moment, we need to make sure that it's not just Black women who are going to have to defend democracy in 2024. It's going to take all women to defend democracy in 2024.
So messaging, Daniel, we always hear that the Democrats are horrible at messaging, that, we do all these great things, student loan debt relief, $16 billion to HBCUs, the infrastructure bill, the list goes on and on and on. But oftentimes we will hear Democrats say no one knows what the president has done, the $35 insulin cap, et cetera, and that Dems are bad at messaging. What do you want to hear or see differently from Kamala Harris, the presumptive nominee for president, than what you've seen from her as the vice president?
Personally, I think this is a time for less cheekiness, if that's a thing. I think sometimes we can let trying to, I guess, socialize, like the smiling and the laughing between each and every sentence has to kind of come to an end. We have, the sense of intentionality and seriousness has to come across. The United States.
Now I'm gonna stop you for a second. One, because we're running out of time, and I got to make sure I get Kadida in on this. And what you've just said, Daniel, I was asked that question this morning in an interview, and we know that Donald Trump makes fun of Kamala Harris and her laughter, and we know her smile and just her joyous personality. Kadida, what are you thinking about that? Do you think, and not to suggest that Daniel is sexist or misogynist, but do you think this is a fair critique and one that she should work on? Or do you think her laughing is a sign of a joy? Someone earlier in the show said she's a joyous candidate, that she exudes joy and happiness. What's your take on it?
Daniel's, he's able to have his opinion. Many men are going to have this opinion, particularly of women. And we know that she's going to be looked at about what she's wearing, how she's speaking, how she's smiling, how she's laughing. And I'll say they need to get over it. And I appreciated the moment of joyous candidate. We've been through what I'll call hell for many years in the last decade. And so if we have a candidate who is joyous and can express that, I think that will actually lead to some folks saying, you know what, I'm ready for this. I'm ready for something different. I'm ready for someone who looks like me, who smiles like I do, and who smiles like I want to be able to smile. So yeah, I think something different. And here is a vision of here. This is 2019, I believe. This is in DC, outside of her office. We were talking about trying to stop Donald Trump's problematic judicial nominees in this moment. And this was a conversation we had with the NBA, the Black lawyers group, NBA, right? And we're talking about how we stop Donald Trump's problematic judicial nominees. And I know that in this moment in 2024, I need someone who is going to put more people who look like me on a bench and less people who behave like some of the current Supreme Court justices.
So what do you say to that, Daniel? So Kadida said, men, y'all gonna be critiquing everything, get over it.
Yeah, I think that is not necessarily the right paradigm to have about what I'm commenting, because these things that I'm commenting on are not necessarily about someone being a woman or a man or any of those things. This is about the model of communication. And so any noise that interrupts the messaging of Democrats is the exact reason why they asked Biden to step down. If his inability to fluidly orate or debate is an issue, the same issue will be present with someone that can't hold face during their own debates. Noise is noise. What I want to see out of Kamala is, I think what got her there is precedence, right? We all, again, and I said this on the other shows, that people are looking for viral moments. That is going to take us about 65% of the way, because she is virality. She embodies a lot of first. It's what we want to see. So I think you will get what you're looking for, someone that looks like you, but we're still looking for the behavior of a world leader.
You know, all good points. And I think that's going to be debated throughout the next 100 days, because we know she's going to have a slew of experts who are going to be trying to get her to change how she dresses. Okay, this was what you wore when you were the vice president. Now you're running for president. Here's what you need to wear. Let's look at your hair, your makeup. And one of the things that's going to come up is the issue of how she presents herself, everything from her speech to her mannerisms, etc. Some of it's going to be racist and sexist, but a lot of it is going to be, as you said, Daniel, just about being the world leader that people can look to basically at all times, but definitely in times of crisis. So we'll be continuing to obviously keep our fingers on the pulse of what's happening on the ground in these key battleground states. We'll be coming back to both of you as you investigate more, as you learn more, as more polls are conducted, and as we get more information, not just about Black voters, because it's pretty clear Black voters are fired up and ready to go. But as we start to get more information about those suburban voters, those independent voters, I want to see a lot more data, a lot more polling on the coalition that it's going to take to cross that finish line, which I am 100% certain we can do with the right attitude, the hard work, a lot of prayer, and a lot of positive attitude. So thanks to both of you. We'll be checking in with both of you as we continue to follow this historic moment.